Hi guys, this is Tech Howdy. I welcome you to another video tutorial on creating an ASP.NET Core application with Angular 7. In the last video tutorial, we finished coding our registration method. We also tested the registration and login method, and now we have a user in our database which can use his credentials to log into our application. But if the user is not logged in or he's a guest on our application, then they should not be able to see these links like products and logout button in the navbar. That's because these links can only be available to users who are members and who have logged in to your application. To fix this navbar, we need to go to our navbar component in the application. So let's go ahead and open the navbar component. Let's also close these other components that I have. Now here in this navbar component, we have to write some code that will help us to hide or show links in our application based on the user's login status, and also show links based on the user's role. So to do that, let's go ahead and write the code. So the first thing that we want to do is go ahead and create two properties that we would require. One that will hold the value of the login status for the user. Second, the username of the user. So both these properties will be provided to us by our account service. If you do remember, in the account service, we created some objects of type behavior subject, which is an observable type. And when we created this object, I explained to you guys that a behavior subject type of object will always emit the current value of that object. And that's the reason why we created this object of observable type behavior subject, which is going to return a boolean. Now note, anytime we are going to request this value, we will always get the current value of that object. Also, since other components will not be able to access the value of login status object directly, since it is a private object, we have created some getters in our component, and one of them is get is logged in, which basically returns the value of login status object as an observable type. Since it is returning the value as an observable type, when we store the value, we should store the value in an observable type object as well. Therefore, inside our nav menu component.ts, we will create our object that will store that value. Let's call this object as login status, and we will use a dollar sign here. The dollar sign is usually used by developers since it's a naming convention to identify observable type objects. This observable type object, when we use it in our HTML component of nav menu, it will be easy to identify that this is an observable type when you add a dollar sign. So it's basically for identification and naming convention used by developers. So even if you don't put a dollar sign, it's still going to work. But it's a good habit because usually you will come across Angular code with dollar signs, which basically means that this is an observable type. Now, since it is storing an observable type value, our data type also is going to be observable type, and this login status object is returning a boolean. So when we look here, it is going to return the login status value, which is a boolean. So make sure that we set the return data type to boolean observable and not string. So that should be it for our first object. Now the second object that we need to create, it's going to be the object that's going to store the username. So username of the logged in user, and this is also going to be an observable type, but this is going to be a string. When we go back to account service, our username is an observable type of string, and we are going to get this value from the local storage. And the who's going to set this value in the local storage? It's the login method. Once the user logs in, the local storage inside the local storage, it's going to set a key called as login status and a key called as username, which will hold the value of the username who logged in, user who logged in. So now let's save this. Next thing, which is very important, we have to initialize our objects. So let's do that. So the first thing that we want to do is call the object that we want to initialize, which is login status. And the value that we want to initialize it to is the value that is returned by the account services getter is logged in. So to do that, to access that account service object, we have to first instantiate the account service object inside the constructor of our navbar component. So let's go ahead and do that. That's the drill and we all are familiar with it now. So let's do that. So private, and we will call use it from the account service. So as soon as we use account service, Angular will automatically add the reference to the import statement. In case if you still get an error, that means the reference statement is not added. Please manually add it. Sometimes in Visual Studio on Mac, I do see that it will not add it. I don't know why, but if it doesn't, go ahead and add the import statement. Next thing that we want to do is from the account object that we created, we will call the is logged in method. As we all know, this is logged in getter, sorry, this is logged in property, not method, is going to return the value of the login status of the user. And the next thing that we want to do is we want to initialize the username. So let's do that. Username, and we will initialize this to the value of the why to the value of the current username getter. Now go back to account service. The current username that we created property will return the username as observable. So let's do that. So let's use the current username. So now we have successfully initialized these values, and now we can use these values inside our navbar component.html. But before that, let's also create a method for logging out the users. So in case if a user clicks on the logout button, he will be logged out from the application. So let's go ahead and create that logout method. So let's call this logout method as onLogout. Once again, you can name this anything since it is more convenient, because onLogout, which basically indicates that's a logout method. Now we will have to log out this user. So which method do you think we would need to call? From the account service, we have created a method which is logout. So obviously we will call that method. So once again, we will call the account object and then call the logout method. And what does this logout method do? It will clear the local storage values and then navigate the user to the login page. If you want to navigate the user to the home page, then you can change this to the, just remove this login and leave a // there. So that should be it. Now let's save our navbar component and go back to the navbar component.html. So now in the nav menu component.html, we have different route links and we have a logout button. So initially now we are interested in the logout button because we want to make sure that when this button is clicked, the user logs out. That means the onLogout method is called or fired off. And to do that, we will call the click event. So Angular, to call the click event, we will use open and close our parentheses and call the click event. And then here equal to, we will assign the method that is going to be fired off. So it's the onLogout method. Now save this. Now when we click logout, the user should be logged out and redirected to the login page. Next thing that we want to do is display the username of the user. So when he's logged in, we want to show the username of the user who's logged in. So let's do that. So here we have this a tag that I have created. Now here inside this a tag, we are going to call the if condition for Angular, which is the star ng if. And now here in this if condition, we are going to call the observable type object that holds the value. So let's call this username, and it was a dollar sign. That's how I have used it. Yes, just to make sure, let's copy paste it here. Now there's one problem here. We cannot directly put an observable type here because this is an object that is being returned. It's an object that contains the value of your username. So as I mentioned in the videos earlier, that we can use the dot subscribe method to manipulate the data inside that collection that we receive from an observable type. But we cannot use dot subscribe here. So how do we get the username out of this collection of, or this object package that we received which contains the username? So for that we will use an async pipe. So first thing that we want to do is add the pipe symbol and then call the async async. And then now after that we want to async as. Now here you will give the value, or the you will create a key or that will hold the value that you want. So you want the username. So what we are doing is the collection or the object, the observable type is returning a username. We are going to save that value inside this variable here called as username. So it's so easy in Angular that we don't have to go back to our component.ts and then get the value and store it in an object and then assign that object in our HTML here. In the HTML itself, we can use the async pipe and then call the as keyword and then the username that will store. Basically, I've said username because it's going to store the value of the username. Now to display it, all we want to do is create two curly braces like this, and then this value here, we want to display it here. That should be it. Now pipes have lot of features in Angular 7. So if you go to Angular's official website and you go to pipes, you will see that you can do a lot of stuff with pipes. You can set the currency symbols, you can set uppercase, lowercase for your characters, and you can do a lot of stuff with by using these pipes, and they are very popular. So let's say if you use uppercase, it will, you can change the value of the object to uppercase. So let's say I'm in my application here, I'm going to change this value by using a pipe, and then what how do I want to set the value? So I'll set the pipe and call this as uppercase. Now this value will be converted into an uppercase value. So there are different pipes available. Please go through the documentation if you want to use some different type of pipes, and you can use it here to convert the value. I just put an extra curly brace there. I'm going to remove that, save this. Now let's go back to our application. And as you see, we have the user's name that is displayed here that logged in. So Tech Howdy is logged in. So I see Tech Howdy's username there now. But the logout button, I click on the logout button. I've been logged out of the application, but I still see the username and the logout button. And how do I fix this? Because when I click logout, I should not be able to see products, the username, as well as this logout button. So how do I fix this? So let's go back to our application. Here for the login link, we need to set an if condition. Basically, the if condition will verify if the status of the user is already logged in. then we will not show the login link, and if it is not logged in, then only we will show the login link. So let's add the if condition over here. So star ng if, and here we will use the login status object that we created inside our component.ts. And now our login status object, we will async it so that we can get the value out of it. And we want to store it inside login status. So now we have a condition here that is going to verify if the login status is true or false. And if the login status is true, then we should not display this link. So therefore here I'm going to use an exclamation mark that will check if the login status is not equal to true. So here I'll write another ng if condition that will hide this login link. So let's do that. So this value will be stored in this object here, login status. So we will check the value, and then based on the value, if login status is going to be false, then we will show this link, and if it's going to be true, then we will not show this link. So let's go ahead and do the next nav item that we have here, which is the username. Once again, for the username, we will do the same thing, but we will not use the not operator here because we are going to check if the login status is true or false. Just true. So let's go ahead to our nav item here. First thing that we want to do is get the value of our login status. Just remove this here. So make sure you don't add the exclamation here. The next thing that we want to do is it will automatically hide or show this username based on this value verified here. Finally, we want to do the same thing with the logout button. So let's just copy this code here. So whatever is the login status, and if we have the login status, so here what we want to do is run another ng if. All we want to do is it will show only if the login status is true, then only we will be able to see the logout button. If it is false, we would not see this logout button. Similarly, here we are checking if the username, the login status is true, then only we will see the username. But here we are checking if the login status is not true, then we will see the login button. So let's save this, go back to our application. Since I have already logged out, but as you can see, I don't see the logout button anymore. I don't see the button, the username as well. Okay, we also have to fix this products. So let's do that now itself because we have not yet created the component, but we can at least add the login or the uh, status verification here as well. So products can only be viewed by members of this application. So we will add the same condition here. If the login status is true, then only we can access products. So we will add this here. So now let's go back to our application. and the products is now hidden. We will not see the products unless the user logs into the application. So let's just log in. So now we have logged into our application. We can see the products link. We can also see the logout button. Oh, we still see the register button. We will have to hide that, but just let's click on logout and see. Yes, it does work. So let's go ahead and fix the register option as well. So register option will be the same as the login option because both these links need to be hidden. If login is true and if login is not true, then it needs to be shown. So we are going to do the same thing here. So let's do this. Save this, go back to our application, refresh. Let's log in now. So now we don't see the register option. We only see home, products, and logout. And if I click logout, I should be able to log out, but I can just go to inspect and show you the local storage values that are stored. So if I go to console and type local storage dot get item. Now remember the key that we used to store our login status is login status, and the key for username is username. So in case if you guys want to access the values from local storage, so it's local storage dot get item, the key value is username. So let's hit enter. Okay, I have to use and now I can see that when I add the string username, the key it's tech howdy. Similarly, if I want to access login status, okay, so what went wrong there? Did I spell it wrong? Okay, it's an uppercase. So let's change this to uppercase. And now it's 1, which means the user has logged in, and 0 means false, where the user has logged out. Also, similarly, you can check the JWT token because we will remove it from displaying in the console. The console option is just for testing purposes. So JWT, and if I hit enter, I have the token as well from the local storage. So in this way, you can check the values that are stored in local storage. And if you want to change the values, as I told you, or set the values, you can do that here. So once again, this should be it for this video tutorial. Please like and subscribe my channel Tech Howdy. In the next video tutorials, we will be working on the products component, and we will be using data tables API to create our products component. Also, we need to fix the registration errors. So actually we will be fixing the registration errors in the next video tutorials. We want to display the errors in the pop-up model. So we'll work on that before we start the products component. So thank you again. Please like and subscribe my channel Tech Howdy.